All right, testing. All right, we're good. Hey, so welcome back to another Trofold Paranormal stream. Glad you guys can make it. So I am PhantomGB. You can tell by my cartoon appearance, I am a VTuber. I mostly do gaming, but I love the paranormal. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Laura so she can tell you about herself.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I have been interested and investigating the paranormal for more than 20 years. I've lived in multiple haunted houses. I've spoke with spirits. I've done a lot. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Chris.
Well, yeah, I've done the same. I've been in the paranormal for quite a long time, and I do clearings sessions, things of that nature, pretty much on a weekly basis.
Right on, right on. So today we're going to be talking about vampires. You know, some people believe they're real, some people believe they're not. They could just be myth or folklore, but we're going to talk about them today. The first thing I do want to bring up, just real quick, back before we continue on, is I want to mention the fact that there are people out there who may not be vampires, but believe they are. And one of the first things I kind of just wanted to briefly go over was if you were someone like me or anyone here actually in this stream, we all grew up in the 80s and 90s, and we remember very well certain games like Vampire the Masquerade, for example. If anyone's familiar with that, definitely make a comment. I'd be curious to see. But there was one big news story that broke out during that time. It was called the 1996 Vampire Clan Murders. It happened in Florida. Oh yeah, let me show the image here of this group.
Vampire Masquerade,
Oh yeah,
and I can also share.
interesting image. Oh yeah, like I remember the sheet looking a little different. Almost looks like a D&D sheet in that picture.
Yeah, now this other picture that I'm sharing, it looks like I mean, I've played Vampire Masquerade, and Phantom, you mentioned before that you've played. I don't know, Chris, have you played Vampire Masquerade? No.
No,
I don't remember all of these extra details. I remember it being just the DM equipment, and then everybody just had a printed off sheet that you made your character on. Um,
If I remember,
so
it was just like it was a little different. Like other than like, okay, if you're a person who plays D&D like me and Laura, for example, you know that you use a D20 most of the time. And if I remember correctly, in Vampire though, it was a series of 10-sided dice, and you had your little dots that you filled in. And depending on how many dots you had filled in for your stat, you would roll that many dice. Am I correct in
Mhm.
remembering how that worked?
Yes, that's what I understood. And it was a more of a talking kind of role play sort of like game. I say role play pretty loosely on that,
Right.
you know. You're just collectively telling a story
Right. It was
is what you're doing.
definitely more story driven than like I would say even D&D is
Mhm.
now. D&D
Yes.
has kind of become more of a combat simulator over the years in my personal opinion. Still fun. But the reason we bring this up is because during the Vampire Clan murders with this particular group of teenagers that you're looking here, that was a big obsession for them during that time. I mean, Vampire the Masquerade was huge back in the 90s, but it got to a point where they started to believe, at least one particular guy in the group by the name of Rod Farrell started to believe he was a 500-year-old vampire named Vesigo. I'm assuming that was the character he played as in this game. And as the story goes, he was dating the one girl. Let's see. Let me see what my notes say here. One of the girls from the group. Uh, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember what her name was. Heather Wendorf. That's right. So this girl Heather, and her parents were really really strict, and got to a point where they didn't want her seeing this guy or going out too much. And he convinced her that it would be because he managed to convince her he was this vampire, and that if they can just go in and murder his parents, then they can be together forever. He turned her into a vampire, something along those lines. So he broke in and murdered her parents, and then they fled. So this is kind of an example of people taking something that's folklore, because I know this isn't necessarily paranormal in a sense, but people taking folklore. God, that brings back. I remember that picture.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but kind of a perfect example of taking folklore a little too far, if you ask me.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
You know, personally, I think that it's I think it's one of those things where it has such a hardcore following and people romanticize it so much, um just to the point where now there's a game where you can almost fulfill any of those, thoughts and actions. And that's what Vampire Masquerade was for some people. It wasn't just a game, it was a way for them to live out their dream life that they considered amazing and wonderful and what have you.
Right. I mean, who wouldn't want to be an immortal, overpowered being? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like on the flip side of that, it's just like anything else. Whether or not there actually are true, blood-sucking vampires out there, or not, it's the stories behind them have been, like I said, romanticized and praised and made to be this magical, amazing life. And I think that for a lot of these kids, unfortunately, because that's what they were young adults. They wanted a way to be able to step out of their own life and have that. So, thoughts are things, and they made it happen.
Right. I mean, it was probably a way for them to cope. I mean, we were all teenagers once. I think as teenagers, I think it's safe to say we all had a tendency to kind of take things a little too far, kind of step out of that boundary a little bit because we wanted something more to life than what there was. I know that I have some stories involving the game myself that where maybe we got a little carried away, not to this extent, but we got a little carried away. But I'm curious, you told me that you played Vampire the Masquerade, Laura, and I'm kind of curious, what are some stories you have?
I don't, so I actually got asked by a gentleman that I worked with when I worked at Walmart back in the day. And he was gay, not that that really matters much, but because of that, there was like this flamboyant, kind of fun, you go girl sort of, attitude. And like all of the other people, I was the only female in the group. And so I don't know, for me it was a lot of fun. Because it was just fun role play, and nothing seemed in the game itself. You're kind of making, like I said, you're kind of making the story your own. And so just like things that I could think of that if I was just with a group of, no offense to anybody because I'm nerdy too, but a nerdy group of guys, I probably never would have voiced my opinion on, hey, this is what my character is going to do. But since I was kind of with these more very open, very flamboyant, very just like no stops whatsoever on any idea that you can come up with, it was great. I don't know. I loved it. I think I played for about a year.
Yeah, I never got around to playing that. But also, one take I do have on this. This very well could have been, may not have been, an actual vampire case, but in some countries like say Bulgaria and Romania and them, they basically consider anything demonic. They use the word vampire for. So it's I've noticed there's these trench worker types that go around in a couple of these countries helping people out with demonic possessions and entities and whatnot over there in those countries. And they call everything a vampire that is of a demonic nature. That's just the go-to word they use. like we use demon or something like that here. But the point is, I'm thinking in that case, it very well could have even been a demonic possession or something influencing too. I've run into that multitude of times. Do I deny the existence of vampires? No, not at all. There's even stories floating around of some celebrities being vampires. And that's the whole adrenochrome thing there. But do I believe it's like all rampant and that particular teen was vampire? No. But in that case, I think it was more of an oppression possession type of situation, if anything.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say was that's what I believe that was, because I've seen and heard of murder cases where there have been instances where somebody's messed with a Ouija board, somebody's messed with not closing a paranormal circle correctly or something, and in some cases it's turned into something like that. So that very well could have been something like that too.
Yeah.
We don't.
I mean, I see where you're getting at with that. We also have to keep in mind this is the era where right before this, there was the satanic panic that parents came up with, and anything was considered satanic. And so I feel like a lot of those children and young adults felt like, okay, well, we can't look into Wicca or paganism or anything like that. So I'm gonna start believing in vampires, or I'm gonna start reading about it. I just kind of feel like sometimes, especially back then, we didn't have the internet really. And so people were bored. Kids were bored. They used their imaginations.
Yeah, 100%.
And like I said, thoughts are things. And, you know, who's to say that these kids also didn't have some sort of mental issues that they firmly believed that they were what they say they were.
Right. Kind of building off your thoughts are things. I mean, during that time, like Vampire the Masquerade was just one of those things. I mean, there was lots of things there. It had such a cultural impact at the time that, you know, people could take it too far. Just kind of like now, we have a lot of culture aspects now where people tend to take too far. But back then, like, you know, people were really into vampires, and there was the goth scene. Chris knows I was in that whole goth scene, right? So I hung out with all the kids that were into vampires and witches and warlocks and things like that, and Wicca and stuff like that. That was the crowd that I was part of. And I remember there was also a book, and everyone remembers Hot Topic, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember for a time they were actually selling one book at the one that we used to go to that was it was a supplement for that game. It was called The Book of Cain, because the whole backstory in Vampire the Masquerade was Cain was the first vampire. People were buying that. These kids that I hung out with were buying that book and reading it like it was the Bible. Like it was having that much of a cultural impact. And I do believe that, you know, even people like myself were kind of starting to take things a little too far. I remember we would play the game kind of like, at first we treated it like a D&D game where we were just rolling dice and doing the story, getting to the point where we were starting to act this stuff out, to where I remember one girlfriend I had who joined the group and played. In the process of doing the role play bit me and actually drew blood. And I remember going, I think we're taking this way too far. And shortly after that is when that case came out. I'm like, I think I'm going to take a break from this game now. And I don't think there's anything with the game itself causing people. I think it was just the cultural influence that it had.
Well, that's true enough, unless somebody put a spell on the damn thing to cause this hysteria, kind of like what happened to Ouija boards. Yeah. That's an all-out.
Yeah, but I think that's looking too far into it. I really think it just had, I mean, maybe that's possible, but I think it was just more of a cultural impact thing.
I think it's like the same whole thing with like the Slender Man or D&D for that matter. Like I said, that's how Satanic Panic came out originally, was because of D&D.
Oh yeah, D&D was the biggest catalyst.
There's nothing in it that could be considered satanic.
No, it's because I think the biggest reason for that was because, like, I know the creator Gary Gygax, was looking into like legitimate ways to make the game more immersive and looking into like different deities and summoning and things like that, and people were like, oh no, because now that's getting too demonic, and all he was trying to do was create supplements for the game to make it more immersive. And I think that's where that a lot of that originated.
The other issue is that, take for instance LARPers. If you're not familiar, listeners, what a LARPer is, it's someone who initially takes things like D&D stories or Vampire Masquerade and makes it real play. They have, fake swords, but you're still attacking each other and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm guilty of doing that too. I've been out there and I've done it.
I mean, I've toyed with the idea of joining it. I've watched it before. But I think the big difference between that and like say like children like this or young adults like this is that these young adults they become so immersed in it that it becomes their world and they don't know how to shut it off. Now, once again, that could be a mental issue. That could be, maybe it is demonic of some sort. I personally don't believe in demons. I believe in evil people. I do believe in evil spirits, and I've seen evil spirits, have effect on people. I don't know necessarily if it would ever, I guess I can't deny the fact that it wouldn't, but I don't know if it would ever, make a young adult or a teenager turn to something like Vampire Masquerade and just to kill someone, but I don't know.
Well, some say Manson and Starkweather and them were interlocked, not necessarily into like a game, but into more of a concept like that as well. Any serial killers, things of that nature, are interlocked into an energy like that. It's more of a demonic consciousness rather than being linked to soul light, essentially. So
yeah.
There's a difference between the two.
I guess like people like that, in my mind, they are the evil spirits and they're evil people. And just because you're in a body or just because you die does not mean that you instantly turn good or that you have a conscience. A lot of those psychopaths have no consciences, and that is not a result of them all of a sudden becoming possessed by something. At least not from what I know about a lot of these famous killers. This is something that they've had all the way growing up throughout their lives. And I mean, we all know narcissists.
Right. Here's an interesting take too that I thought of is, going back on the whole Manson thing that Chris mentioned, some people are just naturally, like, you have cult leaders all over the place. People are just good at gathering people to believe in these weird, crazy things. So this situation, like you mentioned with Manson, or this kid that thought he was a 500-year-old vampire murdering his girlfriend's parents and getting her to go along with it, isn't almost the same thing, really.
Oh yeah, cult leaders have been around forever. Those narcissists that can literally influence people and gather people around. Manson was said to be able to stop a clock with his mind, pretty much. And one of the prison guards that was around him actually said he witnessed it and said he was completely creeped out by it when he saw this. So there's some people have that innate ability to control other people like that.
That's wild. I guess that's the first I've actually heard of that. That's kind of wild.
Oh yeah, prison guard gave a small testimony, but he quit shortly thereafter. And there was another guard that committed suicide because of it as well. There were a couple witnesses. Another angle that I've actually seen to things like this are past lives as well, where somebody had something similar in another lifetime, and it's bleeding forward into this one, because technically all time is happening all at once, and so you're accessing a giant library. So if you already have a thin filter to begin with, you're bringing in this information, and could a rogue element from within that library bleed through? Yeah, I've actually seen things like that happen, where people are accessing that information and it transmutes them in this time frame to become that too. Of course, narcissists are born that way. I've seen that serial killers, yes, born that way, but I've seen others change part of the way through their life too. I've actually seen certain things like that happen where they'll tap into something and turn into that. Joanna and I call that being shoved into your big toe, where your true personality is shoved into another party, or technically it's another part of your own energy, and it's replaced by whatever this other energy is.
For a minute
I've heard
all I could think of is that song by Lady Gaga, "I Was Born This Way." that just, sorry, as soon as you said that just started going through my head.
That's funny, but yeah, that. But I wanted people to consider the past life angle too, because I'm thinking that's part of the origins of some of the schizophrenic behavior, where some people are just able to access some of this, and it's changed some of their thought patterns as well. Where they could have been in another time frame, they could have been say a woman or a guy that was very vampiric or was manipulating people at that time, and now they're different in this one, but something's mirrored from a different time frame somewhere, and now they are accessing it and using it here, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, no, I totally could see that.
Mm-hmm.
What are both of your guys' thoughts on like actual real vampires though?
Well, I know that's a tough one, because I know there are people who, there's some sort of medical condition I did some research on, where people, maybe it's not a medical condition, but there are people who believe that they have to drink blood to survive. And I'll have to look up more into that. But I know there are people that do that. And then I saw something about a possible medical condition where people, like, I think it's more people need blood transfusions a lot, is what that more has to do with. As far as vampires actually being real in the sense that we know them as, could they be? Maybe, but I don't think they are in the sense that we see them through like whatever glorified thing Hollywood does.
The only thing I think Hollywood had pretty much right was that it was based on a viral contagion, and could somebody become that and pass that from one person to the next? Yeah. Do I believe there's actual real vampires? Yes, or I wouldn't have made the video that I gave you, Laura, earlier. But do I believe it's tied into the whole Hollywood adrenochrome lore and everything? Yeah, I think that's tied directly into that. Do I think there's real life like you'd expect, the fangs and everything? Yeah, but I don't think there's that many of them. I think there's a lot of wannabes out there, like somebody who's just dreamt it up. But then I do believe there's some old guard out there that are actual vampires. I think it's more alien related. I'm not going to go into that part, but I think it's more ET. Yeah.
That's funny that you actually say that, because I was going to kind of, I don't want to say go alien route, but I do believe that there are creatures out there that do very well at mimicking being quote unquote human, and they're not. But I also agree with you. I don't think there are as many out there as we want to believe that there are. And I think that they're just another dimensional being or creature that, they have the ability of making themselves look like the rest of us, and that's why they can fit in, and they have figured out that they can feed off our energy and feed off of our possibly blood supply, if not bodies. And with there not being that many of them, I think that they kind of have their pick at humans, and so
I can go along with that.
I feel just like the lore, yeah.
I can go along with that. I would believe that energy vampires would be more of a thing, than the traditional vampire who's biting your neck and sucking your blood. And you're probably right. There could still be beings out there like that. I'm not going to dismiss that, but I can definitely tell you, like, I've run across people where all of a sudden I'm just mentally drained. Me and you have already had an experience like that. Laura. Now, when
Mhm.
we talked to Audley that time, I felt like his explanation was good enough to where that could explain what happened in that sense. But I know I've run across
Sure.
people before where shortly after running across them or meeting them, all of a sudden I want to go take a freaking nap.
I mean, there has been people that I feel myself subconsciously freely giving my energy to, and I'm like, wait a second, why am I, I have to stop myself and go, why am I doing that? I don't give out my energy that freely, and it's usually those kinds of people that I'm like, oh, okay, well, I
Yeah, it's
need to
a
put in
tough
some.
form of telepathic manipulation where they reach into your subconscious.
Mm.
I can believe that. I bet there's people out there that will trick you into giving it to. Because I'm wondering if there's something. Maybe there's a rule where they can't just take it. You have to give it, but they've got tricks.
Yeah,
Like,
I can see that.
It's kind of like
exactly.
the whole mythical. The mythical part of vampires, where in some, depending on what you believe, like maybe they have to be invited in. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It could be on the same principle as that. However, they can pull tricks to try to get you to do it.
Yeah,
I can see
manipulate.
that.
Yeah.
Fun fact, actually. Did you know that the Count from Sesame Street, is the reason why he counts is that comes from old vampire folklore that you will stop a vampire from entering your house by hanging, I believe it's an uneven amount of items, small items such as like hairpins or nails or something. They are compelled and have to count all of those things before they can leave that area.
Interesting.
Oh, that's like
And
an OCD trait. There's that one I did not
yeah,
know. That is very
yeah,
interesting.
so the theory is like if you put enough little things in your window sills, then the ghost, I mean the vampire takes the whole night to have to count all of those items before, and by the time that they're done counting, the sun's already coming up.
That's interesting. That I've never heard of that before.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
That one's new to me too. So
Leave it
interesting.
to Laura to find this little tidbit of information that we didn't know.
I
Yeah, I
actually
do
knew
digging.
that.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I do digging, and I didn't know that one. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, you should look it up. Um, Chris, you had mentioned you did a video. I do have that section pulled up. Should we go ahead and play that?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let me.
Rest of that, I can always
We'll put those links in the description for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you guys want to check it out, go ahead. This is actually a small one.
Did you ever hear the conspiracy that Garth Brooks was a serial killer? Yeah, it's a popular long-running
But actually, that theory has come up a lot.
kind of like my content, all satirical in nature and for entertainment only. Well, if you haven't heard about it, let me clue you in. And remember, this is for entertainment only. And make sure you stick around to the end because there is a big surprise coming.
Well, according to the theory, Garth's hectic schedule touring provided him the perfect cover to be able to, assuage essentially his bloodlust. And so from there, I started cross-referencing, searching for either unalivings that are unsolved or missing person cases. And the event that got me a little spooked, there was a cluster of disappearances that occurred in 1993. And it was like in short order. It was, Garth's in Indianapolis, boom, woman comes up missing. Shortly thereafter, he's in Chicago for 3 nights at the Rosemont Horizon, boom, boom, boom. And so once you start getting these type of clusters, all of a sudden it's like, well, what is the probability of these events occurring if the hypothesis is true?
So the Indianapolis and Chicagoland area. You know who else is from that area? No, you don't? I wonder if you recognize this guy that Garth can seamlessly morph into. Do you recognize him? No? You're not sure who that is? Well, maybe I should show you what he looks like with a little makeup on. What if we just changed his hair color a little to a little bit more red and then put some clown makeup on him? Do you recognize that now? John Wayne Gacy. But I mean, that's just totally preposterous and ridiculous. I mean, they gave him the juice, right? They ended his life, kind of like a lot of the other people that they tell you whose lives have ended. Haven't ended. They're vampires, people. And I'm proving it over and over and over again. And guess what? They don't take out their own kind. No, they just take out people like you and I. And they put them under the ground.
Okay, you can stop it there if you want.
Kind of like this.
That's crazy. That's interesting.
So I haven't heard that. I guess that, he's John Wayne Gacy. But I have heard a lot about him being a serial killer. Now, of course, he denies it. It is a little odd. However, we also have to keep in consideration how many huge fans follow people like that, especially living here in the US. And that's all they do is travel along. And some of those people are truck drivers, and truck drivers, the FBI actually estimates that the amount of actual serial killers in the US is actually double than the amount that they say every year. And that is due to the fact that a majority of them are most likely truck drivers. Now, if you're a truck driver and you're like, oh, not all truck drivers, we get it. However, if you think about it, a truck driver has the perfect alibi. They were just going through. They are able to pick up people. They're not really, you don't really think about them. They're in and out of a town in less than 12 hours, and they can bury bodies out in the middle of nowhere. They know where all those places are at that people aren't around.
That's a very fair point. I never even thought about that until now.
That's a whole other subject, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw this. Our mutual friend Bjorn sent me a video that was already a reaction video within a reaction video, and now it was on our video as well. I saw this, and there was another bit that we saw that people think that his alter ego Chris Gaines was actually the real vampire persona, and the magic actually dictated that he could tell you who he was for a brief period. So we flipped it around to the whole Chris Gaines thing. When I heard that sounded like sounded kind of like what the government does for aliens. Oh, we told you in TV shows, we told you that. That sounded vaguely similar to that. So that sounded kind of like the whole consent deal with vampires. So I thought that was interesting, where all the bodies pile up around him and wherever he went. I just thought I'd add that little bit in there because that particular one has been floating around the internet now for a while.
So the crazy thing about that, Chris, is these bodies that it's mainly women that they're locating when he's gone to a town. And he still goes through and, has different concerts in different towns and that to this day. And they're still finding bodies every time he goes somewhere. So there might be something to it. I don't know.
Yeah, there may definitely be definitely something to that. It's a shame because a couple of his songs were actually pretty good. So
right.
Yeah, but that being said, I think you're going to find out one of these days that happens to be true. They're going to prove, like they did in True Blood, you're going to have vampires out in the open, and they're going to prove that one at some point.
Yeah, but by the time they do prove it, it's probably not going to matter.
That's true enough, too. The people involved, families will all be gone, probably. Yeah, but
and hopefully by then they'll have something like True Blood, where it's a synthetic blood, and it shouldn't matter anyway.
Exactly. That's what I felt was kind of accurate about that show, where in a real situation like that, would somebody come up with something like that? Yeah, of course they would.
Of course, anyone who's watched the show also knows just how out of hand things will get real quick.
Oh, most
That is very
definitely.
true.
Most definitely. Does anybody else have any other videos to show?
I do have some videos. Now one of these, I'm not sure if it is the actual lady telling her side of the story, and the other video is of somebody who had heard about the story and is just repeating it. So if that does happen, I will end that pretty quickly. But let me share some of these smaller ones, and these are all like vampires that are that people have met in New Orleans.
True vampire encounter in New Orleans. This happened on Fat Tuesday, and the story came from a girl named Ness and her sister Jen. I said I could tag her too, so she's going to be in the caption. It's Fat Tuesday. Ness and Jen are partying, raging, having a great time when they meet this light-skinned black man with these amazing green eyes. That's literally how she described him. She said his eyes were mesmerizing. She said eventually his attention drifted to her sister Jen, even though they were both kind of feeling him. This was an all-day event. They had been drinking all day, partying all day, bar hopping all day. So they're talking to him for a little while, and they decide they're going to change venues. They don't exchange contact information. They don't care, whatever. So they're going bar to bar, and a little while later they end up at this other bar, and they're standing in line to get in. When all of a sudden they see him again, she said they must have just not noticed him at first, but he was also in line to get in this bar. He's in line behind them, so they turn around, they start talking to him, and when it comes time for them to go in, he gestures for them to go in first. From that point on, they were like hanging out with him, so he was going bar to bar with them. Every time they went to a new bar, he would let them go in first. But before they would go into each bar, he would ask them, like, do you want me to come in too? And she said Jen always answered the same way, which was, yeah, boo, come on in. So the three of them stay out late, like late. And the night is wearing down. All the people are starting to turn in for the night. Ness and her sister are like pretty wasted. So they're like, we're going to go back to our hotel. And he's like, do you want me to walk you back? So they're like, okay, we love a gentleman. So they let him walk them back to the hotel. When they get to the hotel, he takes Jen's hand in the middle of the street and starts slow dancing with her. She said they were in like a drunken haze. So it just added this other layer of like a magical evening. And they didn't really think anything of it. But then he leans into her neck and he opens his mouth as if he's about to bite her. His teeth like barely graze her neck, and she jerks back and she's like, I'm sorry, like I wasn't looking for anything. I was just having fun. Like I wasn't looking for anything like that. He's just staring at her, and she said he had this look of defeat on his face, but like there was another expression too, which they didn't know what it was. And maybe it was just the streetlights, but she says she swears his face shifted. And this is such a common theme in all of these stories, I'm realizing. And he says, may I come in? And Ned says that both of them just got a chill. Like they talked about it afterward. A chill ran through both of their bodies. So Jen snaps out of whatever trance she's in and she just says no, very firmly. Literally the moment that the word left her lips, he just turned and started walking down the street. No goodbye, nothing, after they had spent hours and hours together. So they turn to look at each other and they're like, that was weird. And they turn back and he's just gone. They scan the street, don't see any trace of him. Like he just vanished into thin air. So after she sent me the story, I emailed her back and I was like, can I just ask you how you came to the conclusion that he was a vampire, not just like a weirdo? And she was like, because he asked us so specifically if he could come in everywhere we were going. She said most people would have just gone bar to bar, like not needing permission to enter, but his hesitation was very apparent. Like it was a public party. He could have gone anywhere he wanted. He also had very sharp, pointy canine teeth, which she said she's aware that some people have this, but that they thought the coincidence was too weird. And then at the end of the night, instead of going in for a kiss or whatever, if you think you're vibing with this girl, you're just going to try to bite her neck. Oh, another thing, apparently he was wearing an Eagles hoodie, and at some point in the night, they had asked him like where he's from, and he said, I've lived here longer than you can imagine. So I don't know, apparently vampires are Eagles fans. I'm also on day 3 of trolling Netflix, and let me know if you want Fae, Leprechaun, or Dwayne.
So that's one of them.
Interesting.
Let me...
So that's interesting. Yeah, well, I'll touch on that after we watch this next one.
Yeah, all of these take place in New Orleans. So,
ironic. That does not surprise me at all. If there was a vampire capital, I would believe that would be the place.
That would be their hub. Yeah, I firmly believe that. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, also, it's very accepting to be completely different there. You can be spooky, and people love it. Anywhere else, you would get a side eye, like, what the hell are you doing?
In fact, I would be as bold as to say that that would probably be the supernatural hub of the world, because there's probably a lot more than just vampires walking around.
Chicago is actually pretty high up there for supernatural.
Oh, he most definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway.
All this lore about like, oh, I met a vampire at a bar in New Orleans. My Uber driver told me he met a vampire once. Like, if you meet local people, everyone will have some sort of story. There's one really infamous story about how this lady claims, and she's a bartender, that the Carter brothers came into her bar. And the Carter brothers are infamous. Everybody has a story about them. They were these brothers in the 1930s in New Orleans. They were rumored to be vampires after allegedly abducting and draining the blood of their victim. A lot of people think if there are like weird things happening around town, known that are like supernatural and unexplained, it could be linked to one of the Carter brothers. Another famous example is Count Saint Germain, and people know of him as the man who does not die and knows everything. And everybody's had sightings of him. People have claimed to have been seeing him since the 18th century, and he just like changes identities as time goes on so people don't, you know, figure out he's immortal. There are thousands of stories just like this. New Orleans is a bit of a paranormal hotspot, and if you're a local or a visitor, it
As
seems
we were
like
just
everybody
saying.
ends up having some sort of story. And if you like my spooky
I like how she kind of confirmed that. That's nice.
This next video is a little bit longer than those last two, but it is of an actual story. Now, this might be the lady that was the bartender. I don't think it was. I think this is actually a different story, but nonetheless, she does have an experience, and I want to hear her story.
Hello, TikTok. Fagger Freestyle here with another story time about the time I met a vampire. I tried to do this story the other day on live and it just did not work out. But anyway, I just decided to record a video. People have been asking me about the story, so here it goes. I'm a rideshare driver in New Orleans.
A rideshare.
So, of course, I encounter all types of people from all walks of life. So one particular ride was very interesting. Now, this was a couple of years ago when this occurred. And I'm going to tell you, for the most part, I remember what she said. I do not remember what she looked like. And there are some details that when the experience was over, like I had completely forgotten some things. But anyway, so I'm riding, pick up this passenger, and I remember our conversation. And the craziest thing is I can remember her voice. I can, and even as I'm telling you this, I can hear her voice in my head. And I can even picture like this part of her face around her mouth, her lips. I can see them moving as she's talking to me. And I remember her hand being on my shoulder, and I remember what it felt like when she touched me. But a lot of other stuff, it's like was just completely erased. So I pick her up, and I do know that we were having conversation. I talked to many of my passengers, and she is telling me I have really great energy. So I told her thank you. You know, she asked me some things about myself, you know, nothing too private, nothing with too many details. So, you know, I just kind of gave her some general info. And I remember her telling me that she wasn't from here. That I do remember. And then she proceeds to tell me how much she loved New Orleans, how much she loved being there, living there, et cetera, et cetera. I do recall asking her where she was from originally, and all she told me was that she was from very far away. And it's funny again because I'm hearing her voice in my head as if this is weird. And I've never shared this story with anybody, so TikTok, you're getting it first. She touched my shoulder at one point, and this is where things got really strange. She touched my shoulder, and I felt like I just froze. And even as I'm talking to you right now, I can distinctly remember that feeling of feeling frozen. And my hands were on the wheel because I could see my hands on the wheel. The car wasn't moving. And being frozen in that moment, I hear her voice, but not like I'm here talking to you. In my head, I hear her voice telling me, don't be scared, that she's not going to harm me. And then after that, we're moving again. And I remember kind of turning and looking like that. And she was sitting back in the seat and her hands were on her lap. And I said, what did you do to me? And she just smiled. And she says, I just leached some of your energy.
Mm-mm.
And I said, what?
I would
She
not
said,
be
I just
okay with
leached
that.
some of your energy.
No.
Neither would I.
She said, this is going to sound crazy, but I can assure you it's true. I'm a vampire. She said, but I'm not the type of vampire that you've been taught about in books and movies. She said, those types of vampires exist, but they're very rare these days. I'm a vampire that feeds off of energy. And all I have to do is touch you to get it. She said, New Orleans is a great place for her and her kind to exist.
They can brush up against anyone at any time. Of course it is.
Quite a few members.
It's pretty
of
heavily
their
populated.
tribe is what she called them. I think I remember this part of our conversation so significantly because I believe when she touched me, she implanted something in my mind, whether you want to call it a memory or a thought or an idea. But she gave me something of herself, probably, to where I can recall this portion of the interaction between us. Maybe she knew that eventually I would share the story with others and therefore maybe make it a little bit more acceptable for them to start, for her and her members to start presenting themselves. I don't know. I don't know why she even chose me for this. But she told me that there are vampires that survive off of good energy. There are vampires that survive off of bad energy. There are vampires that survive off of sexual energy. And there are vampires that survive off of blood.
I believe that.
And New Orleans is the only place in the world where you can find members of all four of those vampire tribes.
I think they're also in Chicago, but more underground.
Maybe she wanted me to remember this portion of it.
I believe that.
As a warning. I don't know. But I know she wasn't lying just because of how I felt. And even now, it's crazy because I still feel like her hand is on my shoulder, which makes me wonder when she touched me, did she create some type of psychic connection between the two of us? I don't know, but I think I need to end this. Anyway, I don't remember where I dropped her off at. I don't even remember dropping her off. The next thing I remember doing clearly was being in a part of town that I didn't remember how I even got there. And it was like 2 hours later. And I was just in a parking lot. Just in a parking lot. And I know it sounds weird, y'all. I think I probably shouldn't even recorded this. I probably shouldn't even be talking. I probably should not even be talking about this. I shouldn't.
I mean, but to be fair, you uploaded it, so.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry. So, she made the comment about, like, almost like after the gal touched her that she must have implanted or something. What it was on top of the vampire or energy vampire, whatever it was, taking some of her energy. Anytime you are touched by anyone whatsoever, you're leaving a part of your energy. And so that to me is not completely absurd. Not necessarily the fact that she like implanted something, but I think that she left enough of her own energy that they have that tie.
Right. It just happens to be a case where she took more than she gave.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an energy exchange. It's the same as those destiny swapping things with the elbow bump. It's essentially
I was just going to mention that too. Yeah.
And with that, she also seemed to have a bit of missing time in there too. Could a form of like glamour magic, like you see in True Blood? Oh yeah, absolutely. You can give somebody missing time. The aliens do that crap constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a form of glamour magic. That, and I also firmly believe the black-eyed children cases are part of this too.
Oh, I hate the black-eyed children.
Yeah, with the vampiric cases, I believe it's black-eyed children.
I guess I'm not familiar with that case. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, maybe you guys can do that on your guys' next show together. I don't like to talk about them, so.
Yeah, recommend that one. That one I still think stems off the vampire category because they needed to be invited in, even into people's cars because that's considered a home. So for people, so definitely Phantom. Look into that one because that is a very creepy couple cases.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that now.
About the first guy though that you talked about, the green-eyed one, yeah, definitely New Orleans. I do believe that is a hub, like what that lady was saying in that last video, where she said there's 4 different kinds. I firmly believe that because energetically I've encountered all of those categories myself. So I do believe, can there be the telepathic kind that are physically human, like that woman that she encountered? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think again it straddles the alien category? Yes. Because she said she was from very far away, but technically, relatively speaking, New Orleans isn't that far away. So she was hinting at something else, more of an alien link. Too,
I've never been to New Orleans myself, but I've heard from other people that the energy there is just off the charts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always wanted to go, but I've never gotten the chance myself to go there. And as far as like the whole alien thing, to me, that is more dimensional beings than anything.
Mm-hmm. Mostly, I believe. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Vampires are definitely an interesting topic for sure.
Right. I mean, there's probably so much more we could go into on them because there's a lot of information out there. At the end of the day,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, at the end of the day, when it comes to like, if I personally think vampires are real or not, I think they are to a certain extent. But like I said before, maybe just not the way Hollywood and popular media likes to portray them.
Mm-hmm. I was just gonna throw out there. In my late 20s, I worked for an adult novelty store, and I worked very late hours. And we'd get all kinds of people that would come in. But there were a couple nights where randomly different kinds of gentlemen would come in and they just did not seem normal at all. And they would come up and they would talk with me and they wouldn't even go look around the store at all. And then they would leave after they got done talking with me.
Interesting. Hey, real quick, I just want to say, we just got a hi, guys, from Nobody on chat. Thank you for coming to the stream.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. So they would just come into the store, so they would just come and talk to you and not look at anything.
Yeah, like one gentleman, he had slightly darker skin. He looked to be, I guess typically what you would consider somebody that was possibly from Jamaica. He kind of had that accent and he had dreads and he came in and he came up and didn't appear to be on any meds of any kind or drugs of any kind. Because that was my first thought because I got this wave of energy from him that I was like, "Oh, this is not normal." And he was very friendly. He had a big smile and he was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm great." And I think my second thought in my head was, "Oh, great. Like here I'm gonna have somebody that's coming in that's gonna try to hit on me the whole time while I'm working." And that's not what it was at all. He actually we began talking about energy, which is really kind of strange. And I don't really remember much about what the actual conversation, the words were or whatever. But that's just my poor memory because I didn't deem it, you know, anything real important. Um, but I remember it was a lot about good energy versus bad energy and that kind of thing. I think he shook my hand, but that was it, and he didn't go and look around the store at all. And there was other people that had come in while he was there, and he just continued talking with me, and when they came up to purchase some items, he backed away and, stood off to the side, let them purchase their items, and came back and started talking with me again. He was only there maybe a half hour or 45 minutes. Um I don't feel like he took any of my energy or anything like that. But I did during the conversation, I was thinking to myself, like, there is something not quite right about this gentleman.
So
And he had piercing blue eyes, but I thought they were contacts. So
That's right. A question that kind of popped in my head. I'm going to ask you guys, but first I want to say something. So Nobody said in chat. He said, Josh Turner interviewed someone who claims that a vampire told them that there were something like around 27 different types of vampires. What do you guys think about that?
oh, I don't doubt it.
Oh, I don't doubt
mean,
the
if
different variations and variants of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I might look
Yeah.
at. I might see. Nobody, is there like an interview that we can watch? I wouldn't mind checking that interview out. The other thing I wanted to bring up too was, what do you guys think about the whole myth of vampires in sunlight? Like, was this during the day, for example, for you, Laura, when this guy came in, or was it at night?
no, it was in the evening. I don't
Yeah.
know what time, but it was in the evening.
Because I
Oh,
always
yeah,
thought that maybe the sunlight thing was always a myth, potentially.
Yeah, with that, what I think it is that maybe they might get sunburned slightly more easily, but it's not like Hollywood where they burst into flames or something.
Right.
That
Like,
would be,
I would be more inclined to believe that a real vampire maybe would just get more like maybe during the daytime, maybe the sunlight just drains them, so they got to get out of it. They're not. I don't really feel like they would just burst into flames, because if that were the case, wouldn't we have noticed something by now?
Maybe. So here's my thought on it. I think that as humans, when the sun is up and it is not, even in the summertime when about 6, 7 o'clock, the sun is still up, but that it's getting towards nighttime. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like as humans, when the sun is up, we listen to our intuitions maybe a little bit more, not not to say that people don't listen to it, at night. I just think that it's harder for these types of beings to work their magic on people during the daytime because we're more alert. We're more we notice the differences, as opposed to in the evening, a lot of those little differences go unnoticed. And it's a little more accepting of some of the bizarre differences. Does that make sense?
No, that does make sense. Nobody made a comment too. He said Beverly Rhodes said that initially newbie vampires cannot go into the sun, but as they get older, they can. So,
okay, I can see that. Just like
we were just saying, there's probably so much more information we can find out about this that we would probably have to save it. We'd have to have like a part 2 stream possibly down.
I was gonna say we definitely could have a second.
But
show
I am
on
definitely curious about that interview that you mentioned there. Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, you came in at a time where I think we were getting ready to wrap up. I don't know if you guys got anything else to share or talk about.
I don't.
The one thing I will say though is if anybody's seen the movie Sinners, that's actually an excellent vampire movie. Joanna and I saw that, and it's pretty good if people want to check out a new good vampire flick.
They're also coming out with a new 30 Days of Night, I believe.
Ooh, that'd be good. I'll also, Chris, I know that you casually mentioned off the air that you would like to talk about Saint Germain, Count Saint Germain. I also really love that story, so I think we could have a whole show on that.
Yeah,
just
I think
because
that's
of all the craziness.
Yeah, the Count of Saint Germain, yeah, definitely.
I don't have I don't really know a whole lot about that, but I'll look into that before. Maybe that will be a show here in the future too. We'll definitely have one.
That could be part of the part 2 for the vampire one. We do that because that's part of his lore is the whole vampire.
Yeah, I think we should definitely have a part 2 like to this one, and probably some of the other streams. I know some of the other topics we've talked about too. I think kind of warrant a part 2, but definitely this one.
Most definitely.
So. Well, I don't have really too much else to say or share, unless you guys do. Just so everyone knows, will be taking a break next week. There will not be a stream next Friday, but we will be back the following Friday. Sounds like it will just be me and Chris, so you'll just have to put up with us. It is what it is. But
pretty much,
yeah. Thanks for coming to the stream, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye, everybody.